Welcome to Funnel This, the podcast where fintech marketers and founders learn what really works when it comes to brand building and driving demand.
It's hosted by me, Sally Baker. I'm the founder of fintech marketing agency Wondrous.
Follow the podcast on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Just search Funnel This.
Welcome back to Funnel This. Today I'm really excited to be joined by Sarah Cheeseman, who is a copywriter and works in the fintech and financial services sector. And she's here to talk to us about how to drive B2B growth using LinkedIn, which I'm really excited to get into. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So firstly, thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be doing this. So I am a copywriter. I have been freelancing for about 5.5 years now. I previously, before going freelance, I worked as a marketing manager in various different financial services companies, from startups all the way through to big, huge financial corporations, and always was in charge of various different types of writing, so blogs and social posts and emails. But I never realised that copywriting was a thing. So when I went freelance initially, I thought, oh, I'll just be a marketing manager. I'll just do a bit of everything, and realised quite quickly that loads of stuff in marketing, firstly, I don't really like, but I'm also not that good at. So, and then I realised that you could just do the writing part. So that's when I decided to become a copywriter. And yeah, I've been doing that ever since, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, I started out thinking I want to move away from financial services, try and do something a bit more fun, see if I can do a bit of fashion, a bit of, I don't know, anything. And I did loads and loads of different industries, but actually realised that I just really like working in finance and tech. It's where I'm comfortable, and it's where I really do feel like that you can make the most impact, because it's the industries that loads of people just think are quite dull, and they can be. A lot of companies tend to just write in a safe way, in a way that they think other companies write like that, so we should probably do that as well. Or, you know, they're regulated, so there's a lot of things they can't say, but actually there's so much more fun that you can bring out. And, you know, people have to deal with finance and tech and fintech in their everyday lives, even if they don't want to. So I like to try and make the things that they have to read, they have to engage with, make it enjoyable, make it as fun as you can.
Absolutely. Well, having read lots of your content on LinkedIn, I'm sure that anything that you write is definitely not dull. So
good to know.
And we'll make sure to put your LinkedIn details in the show notes so that people can connect with you afterwards. You're also not the first person to sit in this chair and say, well, I decided I wasn't going to do financial services anymore, but actually it just drew me back in. So very interesting.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn, before we sort of get into tips and that sort of thing, tell us a bit about your journey, because I know, as I've mentioned, read a lot of your stuff on LinkedIn. You're very active and also get tons of engagement. And so what's been your journey to get to that point?
Sure. So I guess, like many people, when I first started my LinkedIn account, it was very much like a CV. I used it as a job seeking tool. I just put in, you know, what I did for a living. My about me was almost like a personal statement. And I probably just had marketing manager or whatever I did at the time. It was very boring. I didn't use it. I didn't post on it. I didn't write articles. I didn't post pictures. I didn't really do anything with it until I went freelance. And then, of course, it took me a few months to feel confident enough to, because a lot of people said, you know, use LinkedIn. It's a free tool. You can connect with people that you want to speak to. But it's just one of those things, putting yourself out there so publicly just makes you feel nervous. So I put it off for a while, and then I think I did a course. I couldn't tell you what the course was at this point, but I think I did a course where there was a woman who was encouraging you to post 4 or 5 times a day and write about this, write about that, write about this. And it was actually quite intense, but I started getting a bit more comfortable with it. And then I realized that the more I was posting, the more people were connecting with me, the more I was kind of feeling confident in it, feeling more comfortable in the topics that I was talking about and the audience that I was trying to connect with. And actually, I think that's when it started bringing me back towards financial services, because I realized people were interested in my background. It's not a particularly interesting background, but I could talk about, you know, experiences that I had within different types of companies, experiences that I had with different managers, different client types. And yeah, I just started to see the benefit of it. And that's when I kind of probably about a year and a half ago said to myself, right, I'm going to post every single Monday to Friday, unless I'm on holiday, and then I just leave it. But yeah, I post every day now, and it's my number one source of leads, 100%. Most of my leads come through LinkedIn. And when I speak to people, they usually say, I feel like I know you already.
Yeah.
Because they hear me talking all the time. They hear my voice. They see pictures of me in my pink flamingo office. And they feel like they know me, which I think it's the perfect way of warming up your lead without actually having to hopefully annoy them.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know I keep saying it, but having read your content, it is so authentic, and you do feel like you're getting to know you and you're really getting to understand your opinions and views on things. And yeah, what better advocate for LinkedIn than just saying, that's your number one source of leads, which is amazing. Which brings me on to, so why should fintech founders or fintechs be thinking about LinkedIn?
So I think one of the things, and I've kind of already mentioned it, a lot of companies in that space, they think that they have to be very samey. They have to be quite bland. They have to be quite serious. They have to be very corporate. You think of a financial services company, think of a fintech company, you're thinking of man in suit in boardroom, very serious, very straight down the middle. And actually, that is not something that is going to make you stand out in the crowd. If someone is actually looking to work with a fintech company, they are still a person looking to speak to a person.
Yeah.
They're looking to find someone that they're going to relate to, that they're going to get on with, especially if they're looking for a long-term relationship. So for me, being yourself and showing that the industry isn't just a man in a suit behind a desk. It's actually, personality, it's friendly, it's fun, it's interesting. You've got conversations that you can have, you've got experiences that you've had that other people will be able to relate to. So I think just showing up and being yourself on a platform that other people can connect with you on, I just think that's so important, especially in those industries where people don't necessarily expect it.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something that your competitors aren't doing, you're going to be remembered for it.
And you're talking a lot about specific people interacting with other people. People buy from people, don't they?
Yeah.
So how important then do you see a personal profile being compared to using a company page?
Well, I think so. Company pages on LinkedIn have their place. I think they're important. A lot of brands have spent huge amounts of time, effort, money into building their company profile, and they get tens of thousands of followers, and people do want to hear what they have to say. But especially if you're a smaller brand, it's less likely that you're going to get to that wider audience as a brand. Because personally, I don't follow any brands on LinkedIn. I don't know about you, but it's not something that, there aren't any brands that I'm so interested in that I actually really care about what they say, I'll be honest. But I'm more likely to follow a founder or even just a member of staff within a company if they're posting about things that I find interesting, that I find relatable, that I find funny. And then further down the line, if I'm looking to work with a company in that space, those are the people I'm going to go to. So I think it's so important to have that personality and be honest, be yourself. And you can represent your brand in exactly the same way. You can still show off your company values, show off your morals and, the things you do and the type of company that you are as a personal brand. You don't necessarily have to do it through the company brand. So, vital, I would say, absolutely vital.
I think for many people, for a multitude of reasons, LinkedIn is just this sort of scary thing and people don't often know where to start. So what advice would you give to somebody perhaps that would like to do more with LinkedIn? How should they start thinking about what type of content they could share?
So I usually take it back a step before you even start thinking about content. I think the first thing for me is to make sure that your profile is showing you off to the best possible way that you can. So think about your headline, think about your profile picture, think about your about. These are the things, especially your photo and your headline, because that, if you comment on anything, if your post shows up in someone's newsfeed, those are the two things they see first. They see your face and they see the smallest line about what you do, who you are. So obviously you want your picture to be professional in a sense. You don't want to be holding a cocktail with, you know, a silly hat on, but you still want it to show like a bit of your personality, you know, smiling, kind of looking approachable, a nice color. Do you know what I mean? Like, I say a nice color, I mean like the background of your picture. Making sure you kind of stand out while people are scrolling. And then your headline, you know, you want to explain a little bit about what you do, but try and bring a bit of personality into it, make it fun. I think mine is spicy content for finance and tech companies. I want people to know that the content I write is exciting and it's fun. And, you know, I've got like little chili pepper emojis. And then, you know, write about what you do, who you are, why you do it, who you do it for. Again, bring as much personality into that as possible. Once you're happy with all of that, that's when I encourage people to start thinking about posting. And like I said before, it can be really nerve-wracking. You are putting yourself out there in a public platform. Whoever wants to read it will be able to read what you're saying. So I usually, whenever I start with things like that, I try and create content pillars. So I have 4 or 5 set things that I talk about that I'm known for talking about. So I talk about, obviously, content copywriting, being self-employed, being a working parent, things that annoy me. That's a very big one for me. Things that annoy me. And if I'm ever struggling for what to write, I can go back to that, and I find it easier then to say, yes, things that annoy me. And I can, you know, even just write a quick list of piece of advice that someone gave me that's always really stuck in my head, or just build from experience. Write about the things you know. Don't try too hard. Don't try and present yourself as someone that you're not, because it's going to be harder to write content if you're trying to be really, really serious or really, really professional. If you're not, I'm not a particularly professional person. I like to have a laugh. I like to be sarcastic. I've got the British humour down, I like to think. Because I want, you know, when people do speak to me, if they see me online as this very corporate, straight person, and then they speak to me and I'm not like that at all, it's going to switch them off, because if that's the person they've wanted to hire, then I'm completely not that person. So I always recommend to people, write like you talk, but specifically write like you talk to someone you like. So your friend, or you know, how you present yourself at a party, for example. You know, you want people to know who you are, so talk like that.
Yeah, I once heard somebody say, write as if you're writing a letter to somebody that you know already. So you mentioned topic mapping, and I just want to come back to that. If you're a busy person and you want to make sure that you've got your LinkedIn done, how might you go about thinking about structuring your posts, and how would you start with that topic mapping process?
Sure. So for me, the way that I usually do things, so I plan my content quite far in advance. And the way that I do that is I have my content pillars. So I have the 5 things that I generally post about. Obviously, I can go outside of that if I want to. It's not so structured that I can only talk about these things. But these are the things that I think, I'm very comfortable in this. I know enough about this. And I know that the people who are following me are interested in hearing about these things. So I obviously post 5 days a week, which is quite handy when you've got 5 content pillars.
Very.
So I don't necessarily say, right, Monday I talk about being a mum, and on Tuesday I talk about work, and on Wednesday I talk about this. It's not necessarily like that, but the way I will do it is I will go back to my content pillars. I will write a few notes on, like, just 1 sentence, bullet points. This is something I can talk about. That's another thing I can talk about. This is another thing I can talk about. I'll give myself a set amount of time per week to do this. So I don't write out a post every single day and then press post, because actually that takes more time than just doing it in one batch. So I'll usually write between 5 and 10 posts in one go, depending on how creative I'm feeling that day, depending on how many notes I've got. And then I just build on those sentences and I'll start writing things out. I use the LinkedIn scheduler. So I will write all my posts in there, add a picture, not always, but I'll add a picture, and then I will schedule it for maybe 2 weeks in advance. And I'll do that for all of the content. And then later on that week, I have another bit of time scheduled in my calendar where I then go through and edit those posts. Because I find doing it all in one time, for me, I get writer's block. I kind of forget where I'm going with things. And actually, if I read it again 2 weeks later, it's almost like I'm reading it for the first time. And it's almost like I'm reading it as someone in my audience by that point. Because,
Okay, that's interesting.
and then I'm then looking at it and thinking, is this actually interesting? Is this useful? Is this something that I'm interested in reading? And if I don't like it, I can edit it, and I've got plenty of time to do it. And I think that is part of the trick for me, giving yourself enough time. Don't rush it. Don't sit in front of a blank page for ages and just think, I don't even know where to start. Just write something, leave it for later. You don't have to schedule it. You can just leave it as a note on your computer and come back to it later. Then I feel like it's so much easier to get it to a place where you're really happy with it. But yeah, scheduling tools, absolute godsend.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, get yourself some topics that you're happy to talk about and make sure you've got time to think about writing that content in advance.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thinking about personality and I suppose outside of work, how important or not important is it to show people what you're like outside of work and let people get to know you? How do you approach that?
So I think there's a line somewhere in terms of personal life and working life, but I also think that they intermesh so much that I wouldn't be able to just talk about work on LinkedIn, because firstly it would be very repetitive and dull. I do work with some really interesting clients. I work on some really interesting projects, but largely I am just at my desk typing. So if I was to talk about that all day long, it's going to get really boring really quickly. So my personal life does come into it. Like I said, I talk about being a working parent. I talk about my child. I don't show his face online. I don't tell people his name. But if I didn't bring that in, I feel like it would be quite disingenuous, because it's almost like I'm ignoring a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
You know, I talk about my dog, and I talk about experiences that I've had. I talk about conversations I've had with friends. But I think the thing for me is that it has to be quite a decent balance if you're bringing your personal life in. Have it as a personal experience, but bring it through into a professional learning.
Yes.
So I can talk about, this is going to be a terrible example, but say you go for a walk with your dog, you have an interaction with someone, whether it's good or bad, and that's kind of what I learned about this. So I wrote a newsletter on LinkedIn a couple months ago called She Just Doesn't Like Dogs, about my dog, because she just doesn't like dogs. And it was kind of a story about me learning more about her and, you know, her, what she likes, what she doesn't like, and then kind of what that teaches you in terms of you can't just, not everyone likes everyone. So it's that whole thing that, you know, you need to you have to know your target audience. You can't just target everyone. And it was just it started off as a story about a dog. And I do think storytelling on LinkedIn is just one of the most important things. If you're writing a more salesy led post, I would never just say, hi everyone, I'm a copywriter, these are my services, if you're interested, please send me an email. Do you know what I mean? That's never going to work. That's not going to land with people. So I prefer to tell stories and say, someone came to me, this was their problem, we had a conversation about it, this is what I decided to do for them, we've been working together for a few months now, this is what they've seen. If anyone else is experiencing that type of issue, let me know, I'm all ears. You know, this is the sort of thing that I'd love to work on you with. And I just think that type of story-led post, people are interested in stories. You know, we've spent millennia telling stories around campfires, and LinkedIn is now just one of those campfires where we're just hearing more stories from people, and that's how we get to know them. So yeah, personal above everything for me.
Yes. And I guess if you're, I just want to come back to the storytelling point. So I suppose if you are writing a post about the solution that you offer, what sort of tips can you give people to how can they include storytelling in that type of content?
I think for me, you get into the rhythm of it because every situation you've been in is a story. Every client that you've ever worked with, every engagement that you've had with someone, that is a story. Whether it's an interesting one or not is a different thing. But like going back to the previous example, if you have a particular service that you really want more people to buy, then I always want to tell the story of my client. You know, what was the situation they were in? What's led them to needing this service, even if they need it, if they know they need it or not, is a different thing. But um, what what's led them to that?
Yeah.
What is their issue that they're trying to solve? And how are you almost the hero of that issue coming in and fixing it? And that is a story in itself. So I think it's just working backwards rather than saying, you know, this is what I sell. Do you want to buy it? It's more, I understand your problem. Let me explain what your problem is in a way that you're going to read it and say, oh my God, that's me. How do they know? And then you kind of go through the story and then you see the resolution. And then you're almost more drawn to then thinking, this person understands me. They know what my problem is. So I'm going to get in touch with them. So I think it's always trying to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's reading the story or reading the post. And I think that's how you connect with people on a slightly different level and bring out those stories of, so it's not always your story.
Yeah, no, but it's really great advice, isn't it? Because as you say, what you want people to feel when they read that content is, that sounds just like me. And if you're purely saying, this is what we do, then you're never going to elicit that reaction, I suppose.
Yeah. People will just see you as another sales post. I mean, I see it all the time on LinkedIn, and sometimes I do just want to get in touch with them and say, this is how I would rewrite that post. I should probably do it, really, but I should be that annoying person saying, I read your post and I really didn't like it. But you see it all the time with people. They know they need to promote themselves. It's not something they're comfortable in. So they'll just go in and they'll just quickly write out almost like it's on a web page of just a list of services. And yes, I mean, it's going to work in terms of people know what you do, but actually, are they going to read the whole thing, or are they just going to scroll straight past because they see a block of text with a list of prices and you just think that's not going to be interesting to you unless you're specifically looking for it? And one of the things about LinkedIn is not everyone scrolling through and reading my posts and engaging with them is someone who instantly wants to work with me. It's a very slow burn. It's a slow process. I want people to, like I said before, find out more about me, get to know me. So then when I am talking things that are a little bit more salesy, again, you want to lead them down the path a little bit and explain, you know, what you're doing. And it's not just this is what I do, this is what it costs. It's very much more more of a hand-holding exercise, I suppose, in the nicest possible way. You are just trying to bring them on that journey with you.
You just want to be front of mind at the time when they are ready to buy.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly.
So we've talked a lot about sort of perhaps senior people in businesses writing content and using that for growth. But how important is it to take that down a tier? So thinking more about employees and employee advocacy, how important do you see that being to companies?
So when I first started out writing on LinkedIn and writing for other companies on LinkedIn, it really wasn't a conversation at all. No one was really thinking about what employees were doing within the business. In fact, in companies that I've worked with previously, they actively didn't want their employees on LinkedIn. They didn't want people being active and other companies seeing them and potentially trying to poach them. They really just didn't want, they just wanted them to just stay beneath the parapet, let's say.
Yes.
And over, I'd say probably in the last 2 years, it's become so much of a bigger conversation. Companies coming to me and saying, we want our employees to talk about us positively on social media, on LinkedIn. But not just that, we want them to really show off. We want them to shine themselves. We want this to be an exercise in growing their own personal brand. We want them to experience more in the working world. You know, we want them to be having those conversations. We want them to be the face of the company as well. It's not just the CEO, the MD, the founder, even just the leadership team. We want, you know, people within the sales team, the marketing teams, even finance, you know, everywhere. We want them to be showing off what we can do as a company, and we want people to see that people like working with us or working for us. They like, you know, the experience they have here. We're a good company. It's good for bringing more employees in. When you're job seeking, you do research a company. You know, you look through their company page, you look at the About Us, you see the people who work there, you go on the LinkedIn, you see, you know, who is an employee, what type of, you know, what are they saying, what's happening with the company. People are doing that level of research now. So actually, if you have employees that are talking about you in a positive way, you know, they're sharing things that are happening within the company, whether you've got parties or, you know, you bring in pizza on a Friday, you're going out for drinks, you're having team meetings, you're, you know, learning, you're doing training. If they're seeing that type of thing happening, they're more likely to want to work there as well. So there's that element, and obviously that benefits the company. But on an employee level, it works for them as well, because they're becoming more confident in talking, especially if they're in a sales role. I have a lot of companies come to me and say, we want you to give us some training, you know, give our team some training in, you know, how to present themselves on LinkedIn, how to start writing, you know, going back to all of that stuff about content pillars and feeling confident in the type of things that they're going to say. We want them to have that exposure. So I've done quite a few LinkedIn training sessions where I'm just talking to the staff, and yes, you know, some people will get to the level where they're so confident with LinkedIn, actually they think, I want to do something else, and they might leave the company. But I really do think that employee advocacy is such a strong tool for any company that wants to show off what they do and show that, you know, everyone within the company is kind of one tool together. You know, everyone's working together, everyone's comfortable, everyone's confident, and it's just that next level of, you know, it's not just a brand talking, it's a group of people who are all kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose we've said, haven't we, you know, it can be so nerve-wracking to start posting on LinkedIn. And as an employee, I guess that's perhaps got an extra layer of, am I going to say the right thing? What if I say something the company doesn't like? First of all, if you are somebody in the business that's trying to encourage employees to start posting more, how can you empower them to do that without having that sort of layer of nerves?
Yeah. So I think this is where training comes in. As a first step, I would say, whether it's internal training, you know, whether you've got someone within the team who's comfortable to just say, you know, these are the brand guidelines, these are the types of things we'd rather you didn't say. But I think realistically, to be the type of company that is going to promote employee advocacy, you need to be the type of company that actually does have staff that love working for you. And they are going to naturally say nice things about working for the company. And you just need to trust them. You just need to give them that empowerment, like you say. You need them to believe in themselves, and you need to trust that they're going to do it. It feels uncomfortable to me if you have a company that is saying, here is what you can say, copy and paste this. These are the only things you're going to do. I mean, firstly, people aren't going to do that. It doesn't come across very well on social media if everyone's just talking in a way that's not like them. It doesn't come across as very truthful. It's not very honest, and I think people can tell if you're scrolling through and you see someone say, oh, I was really delighted to be part of this experience, and it's just very kind of wooden. You can tell, and I think it's that's not the type of advocacy that I would want people to go down. I think it's more encouraging at events, for example, you know, encouraging people, you know, take photos, tell people you're there, tell people what you've learned from it, you know, talk about the experience of it, and just give them the encouragement to do it, the training to kind of feel more comfortable, but also really just let them do what they want. I mean,
Yes.
LinkedIn is a social media tool. It's not a business tool in that sense. It's not something that your company can have ownership of or should ever have ownership of. Just let people be themselves, and just really just trust them.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I guess maybe if C-suite can be doing things like interacting with the post and that kind of thing, then at least that's going to give some good feedback, isn't it? That this is okay, what I'm doing is okay. But ultimately, like you say, it has just got to come down to trust, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Remembering that people's LinkedIn are their own.
Yeah, and I think you've made a really good point there as well. So if you have people in the team who are a little bit nervous about posting, I think leadership should be involved in this process in terms of, if they see a post from a member of staff, they should be sharing it, they should be celebrating it. And I think that is another boost of confidence that you can give to someone if, a member of staff's starting to post and they're kind of starting to say things and they're being public and they're putting things out there. I think it's really important for anyone who is pushing advocacy within the business to really be supporting them openly and actively. And whether you have an internal system that, celebrates people for how many posts they do or how many likes they get, and just celebrate wins, basically.
Absolutely. And have you got any examples of any companies out there that are doing it really well at the moment?
I mean, I don't have specific company name examples, but I think the companies that I see, the employees that I see who are posting are the people who are, they're sharing pictures, selfies that they've taken with someone in their team.
Yeah.
Talking about experiences that they're having that the company is kind of helping them with. So whether they're doing additional training or they're going for a team lunch or they're doing a bit of team building, or they're just going for drinks after work. I think those are the things that people really relate to, that people are going to see and think, oh, that's a really nice company culture. They're really enjoying their time at work. Celebrating, obviously you see it all the time where people are celebrating getting a promotion or some sort of award internally. Those are the types of things that I think people really enjoy talking about.
And they tend to go down well from an engagement point of view, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because people like to celebrate good news. We see so much bad news in the world, especially at the moment. And I think if you can log on to a platform and see something good happening for someone else, it instantly makes people feel that little bit of endorphin rush. You want to celebrate that with them. And I think those are the types of things that really, really work well. And especially within the fintech world, because it is an industry that we don't really have a huge amount of insight into unless you work in that industry. You don't really hear the stories of the people that work in those industries. Like I said before, there's an assumption that they're all just business people in suits, behind a desk, working really long hours, don't have much social life, don't have much fun. And I think actually that's just not true. We do have a lot of fun. Everyone that I've met in the financial services industry, they're just not these stereotypes that you think
Yeah.
So I think being able to show off what the industry is actually really about, what people are really doing, personalities that are, and experiences that are actually happening. I just think that is so important in this industry.
Absolutely. Sarah, we're going to go on a massive tangent now because we've talked about all the great ways that you can create content and how important storytelling is and what good LinkedIn activity looks like. But what about what bad LinkedIn activity looks like? So can you share any examples of things that you think I would just avoid doing that?
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know whether I've given this impression, but I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I follow a lot of really interesting people who post amazing things, but there will always be things that I see in my newsfeed that I just think, oh no. And I think we all would have seen them. So I think my biggest pet peeve, the biggest one, is people who openly brag and say things that I don't think are true. So, you've got the people who will post a picture of their Rolex on the back of a yacht and say, I started my business last week and now I'm earning 20 grand a week. And you just think, you're not. But whilst those posts, I imagine, are trying to make people feel like they can achieve that as well.
Yes.
What they're really doing is making people feel like they're failing.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing that I think anyone really should be doing. I always think you tell all the good stories as well as the bad. So I will still talk about, mistakes that I've made, things that I wish I hadn't done, bad experiences that I have with clients, obviously without naming names.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest pet peeve, is when people just make out like it's easy. Again, I think one of the things that really switches me off is just very, very salesy posts. People who are just trying to sell something constantly without really thinking about the end user, not really thinking about the person who's reading it. They think they're just going to post and say, this is my service, this is what it is, buy it. And they think they're going to get hundreds of people banging down their door to say, I'm desperate for this, because it just doesn't work like that. Yeah, if only. I mean, the world would be a much easier place if you could just knock on a door and say, do you want this? And they'd say, yeah, here's the money. But it just doesn't work like that. I think, yeah, LinkedIn is a place where, there's millions of users, but there's only a very, very small percentage of people that actually post.
Yes. Something like 5% of
it's not less than that. It's so low. And there is no real big secret. There's no real big trick to being successful on LinkedIn. Really, it is just being a normal person that people can engage with. So if you're doing anything that's outside of that, if you're trying to be someone you're not, if you're being really boastful, if you're being very, very bland, these are the things, like I said before, you almost want to represent yourself like you do in normal life, and you're not going to be someone who goes up to someone at a party and says, would you like to buy this? It just doesn't happen. And you're not going to be someone who just kind of stands or like opens the door and shouts into the room about something they're selling and then shuts the door again, because that's, again, what a lot of people do, is they just post and then go silent. And it just doesn't work.
No, again, just comes down to authenticity, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I hate using that word, because I feel like people say it all the time. You need to be authentic, you need to be yourself. And for a lot of people, you think, well, okay, well, how do I do that? I know how to be myself in normal life, but I don't necessarily know how to translate that into written word. And I think, yeah, it all comes very much down to editing, reading things back to yourself.
Yeah.
Is it something that you'd be interested in reading? And that's probably the first place.
So how do you go about making sure that you don't lose trust or credibility if you do share examples of things that perhaps haven't gone to plan?
I mean, there's always the risk, ever so slightly. If you say, I made a huge mistake, I completely messed up my client's posts and whatever. But those are the things probably you wouldn't want to share. I think it's more just being very human and saying, so one of the examples that I always give is in the first job that I had outside of university, I was a customer service representative in a startup company. I was the only customer service representative. It was a very, very small business. And I was messaging back and forth with another guy on the other side of the office. And he was laughing about the FHM top 100 sexiest women that had just been released. And I sent him a link to it, or at least I thought I did. I actually sent it to a customer who had the same first name. So they got an email from the business. It wasn't me, it was from the business, with a link to the FHM top 100 sexiest. And it's probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in a company. I mean, it was pretty bad. But I talk about that openly and honestly because, everyone's had mistakes like this. Everyone's had those moments at work where their whole body has gone cold and they just think, oh my God, I've done something awful. And I just think being honest about that is only going to make people relate to you a little bit more. You can't just be this perfect person who's done everything right throughout their whole career and every client is, amazed by them and, they've never done anything wrong. I think you have to be a certain type of person to read a mistake that someone's made and really judge them for it and think, well, I've never done anything like that. I think it's one of those situations where everyone relates to something they've done in their career that they've been really embarrassed by or that has caused an issue. But realistically, within your post, you always want to bring it back. And I think it's this storytelling thing again. That happened, but actually the resolution of it is what the story is.
Yes.
How did you fix that situation? How did you make sure that it didn't turn into something worse?
It's a little bit like leaving reviews. Some businesses aren't keen on the fact that customers have the ability to leave a review in case they say something bad, but you can turn that into an opportunity, can't you? It's all about how you deal with it.
Yeah, it's all about, being the company that replies to bad reviews and says, I'm so sorry you had that experience. Please get in touch with us and we're going to resolve it for you.
Yeah.
And if people can see that interaction, then the bad reviews are almost not meaningful. So, yeah, everyone's had a bad experience at work. Everyone's done something stupid. The severity of it can change. Like I said, I possibly wouldn't post if you're the type of person who has actually done something really bad and really wrecked a company's reputation, but likelihood is that most people haven't done anything that bad.
Yeah.
It might feel like it at the time, but I think it is, this bad thing happened. Oh my God, it was really, really awful. But actually this is, how it ended up, and it ended up just turning into a funny anecdote, and yeah, people relate to that.
And I guess, again, it's with anything that you're going to share on LinkedIn, just make sure that it's something you'd be comfortable telling, your boss about, or that sort of thing. It's just judging what are you comfortable sharing, like what's that level.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if there's anything that you're writing where you're kind of a bit nervous to post, maybe that's not the one.
Yeah. Great advice. Any myths that you can't bear hearing when people say something about LinkedIn, you think that's just not true?
I've got two.
Okay.
So my first one is that LinkedIn is just a job hunting website. So I mentioned previously, I worked for a company where they didn't want staff on LinkedIn. They saw it as if you were on LinkedIn, if you were active on there, then you were looking for another job.
Okay.
And that was something that was just kind of broadly known. Don't be open about being on LinkedIn because people will think you're just looking to find another job. And I just think that is mad because it's, like I said before, it's social media, it's a way of connecting with other people, and business is such a huge part of our lives. I mean, we spend a much greater proportion of our lives at work than we do at home with our families. So why would we not try and be more social in that time? Why would we not try and build connections? A lot of the people I have on LinkedIn that I have conversations with it's not a business thing really. We're just, I speak to loads of other copywriters, and you get to have that conversation of, oh God, is this happening to you? Or I've got this problem, or can you help me price this? Or I've got this new client and I'm just wondering if you can give me a bit of a hand. It's just a really nice, friendly networking place. And it's not just about finding a job, although, of course it is for that as well. But like many other social platforms, it's got multiple uses. So it's not just for looking for jobs.
Okay.
The other one is, again, going back to something we've already talked about, people who say LinkedIn isn't Facebook. This isn't where you're meant to come to post about your personal life, to talk about your kids, to talk about your dog, to talk about moving house. This is a business platform, and it's not about being personal. And that, as I'm sure you're aware, what I think is just completely not true. No one would ever go on LinkedIn if it was just completely just business talk. I just don't think people have the interest in their own personal time to go on a different platform and just read solely about work. Obviously, there is plenty of business conversations happening there, people talking about what's happening there in their industry, but usually that will be opinion based, their thoughts on that, and that's personal. And yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you hear so much. LinkedIn isn't Facebook, but I've never seen somebody put something personal on LinkedIn and have somebody comment, "Why have you posted that here? This isn't Facebook."
Yeah,
it's just to say, like you say, it's just a myth, isn't it?
Yeah,
and actually, the personal stuff that I post will always get more engagement than anything else. I think actually people do like to see it, and it does help you get to know people, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's that whole thing of being relatable. I mean, I put a post up yesterday about the feeling I have of going from part-time and having a few days off a week to spend with my son to him now starting school and I'm 5 days a week, and how I've been building up towards this for years. I've known that he was going to start school and I was so excited about having 5 days to myself, but I'm already starting to miss those 2 days off. And I posted about it, and obviously it's business related because I'm talking about work and the balance between having a child. But, you get so many comments from other people who are also all working, they're all they've all got, you know, their own business or they're working for other companies, and they relate to that feeling of how to balance life and how to balance family life and feeling like you're missing out on one or the other wherever you are. You know, if you're at work, you're missing your child growing up. If you're with your child, you could be missing out on opportunities for new clients, and it's a constant struggle. And I just think, you know, I want people to know that other people are going through these emotions. You know, I don't want anyone to think they're the only one who's sitting at their desk thinking, God, I wish I was with my child right now. Or they're sitting in a soft play, bored out of their mind thinking, God, I wish I was at my laptop. You know, we all have these feelings. So I think being open and honest and, you know, sharing experiences that I think other people are going through, I just think that's going to make me more relatable to more people.
Yeah. We've talked such a lot about creating great content, and I think, I hope that people are going to get loads of actionable tips that they can use thinking about LinkedIn going forward. But of course, writing content is only part of it, isn't it? So I wanted to ask, aside from the time it takes you to write content, how long do you think people should spend on LinkedIn a day, and what should they spend that time doing if it's not writing a post?
Yeah. So yeah, there is a lot more to LinkedIn. Obviously, with it being a social platform, the whole point is to be social. So outside of writing content, I would focus my time on commenting on other people's posts, but in a meaningful way, you know, not just saying great post.
Yeah.
But having some sort of response to it. So obviously you're going to need to make sure it is a post that you have an opinion on.
Yes.
But I do think spending a little bit of time engaging with other people is so valuable. I think the statistic is meant to be you're meant to write on 10 posts per day, but really,
Wow.
I know it's quite a lot, and that would take quite a lot of time to actually find the post, to think of something meaningful to say. So I don't necessarily think that that's the right thing to do, but I think you do need to spend time engaging. Again, it's that whole thing of walking into a room and shouting and leaving again. You can have your opinions, your post is all about you, but actually if you're not engaging with anyone else, then you're very much just it just kind of lands differently. It just falls on its face a bit.
I think that also the more that you engage with other people, the more likely people are going to engage with you back.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's how you build those relationships. I mean, I've got quite a few people that comment on my posts quite frequently. I comment on their posts quite frequently. And I feel like we have this relationship, even though we've never actually spoken. And I actually had a meeting with one of them the other week where we just kind of naturally fell into a very friendly conversation of, oh yeah, and you did that the other day, didn't you? And how was that? And you just feel like you know these people. Actually, you really don't. But that's where these business relationships start.
Yeah.
And you just it just feels a lot more natural and a lot more human than just sending out a load of cold DMs, which people still do a lot of. And they do have a place, but maybe not for everyone.
No.
So I think engaging with other people's posts, and I think the other thing, if you can and if you feel comfortable doing it, growing your network, so sending out connection requests.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I do quite frequently, and I think that is one of the things that a lot of people get the ick with, because if you log in and you have a load of connection requests,
It's not Facebook.
it's not Facebook. You have a lot of connection requests from people that you don't know, and that puts a lot of people off.
Yes.
But actually, if you're in a situation like me, where I am always trying to grow my business, I'm trying to make more connections, and not necessarily just clients, but like I said before, people within the same industries as me that I can grow with, I can potentially have partnerships with in the future. I do spend quite a lot of time sending out connection requests as well, because then if you are posting and if you're committed to that kind of frequency of posting, that's how people get to know you. They're never going to really hear of you otherwise. So connect with them. They can always say no if they don't want to, but if they say yes, then they're going to start seeing your content. They're going to start knowing who you are. And eventually, whether it's weeks, months, even years down the line, they might want to work with you. So why not?
Yeah. Sarah, no conversation would be complete without touching on AI and, of course, on LinkedIn. I mean, you can tell a mile off when somebody has shared something that clearly has been written by ChatGPT or similar. Have you got any tips for how to use those tools to perhaps help with your LinkedIn journey, what you should and shouldn't do?
Yeah, definitely. So I have to admit, when AI first started kind of coming out in the copywriting area, I was very blasé about it. I was thinking, these are never going to be able to write like a person. I don't have to even think about it. This is going to kind of come up and just die within a month. And then I used ChatGPT for the first time just to see what it did. And I was like, oh, write me a 700-word blog about this. And it just whacked one out in like a minute, less than. And I was like, okay, that's pretty good. That's really annoying. And I did panic about it. But actually, I feel like me and ChatGPT are kind of friends now. Obviously, a lot of copywriters are so sensitive about admitting that they use AI.
Yeah.
But I just think if you're not using it, then you're just wasting so much of your own time. I won't use it for final pieces of work for clients. That's just not what they're paying me for. But when it comes to LinkedIn, it's so good for trying to almost brainstorm ideas of what to write about. And I think going back to the conversation of, people who just don't even know where to start, you can use ChatGPT to help you build out those content pillars, give you examples of like pointers of, this topic. Is there something that someone said to you that's really stuck in your mind? Or is there a particular experience that was really bad, but you got something good out of it? And it can just help you develop the ideas of where to actually start. And if you're really not a confident writer, because a lot of people aren't, I'm terrible with numbers, but I'm good at writing. And there's people who are really, really good with numbers, but they're not comfortable with writing whatsoever, especially in their own voice, especially something that's going to be public. So you can use it to just, put in an idea, start writing out the story without thinking too much about it. And then you can use ChatGPT to kind of create something that's a little bit more finished. And then from there, and this is something that I will say, edit.
Yes.
Make it sound like yourself. If they've used a word that you would never really use in real life, get rid of it. If they've used a certain sentence structure, I mean, ChatGPT loves to say, it's not just about this, it's about this. And
I truth about this.
Yeah, or opinion. But I just think people can see those things.
Yeah.
And whilst I don't really have an issue with people using ChatGPT on LinkedIn, because like I said, not everyone is a natural writer, is that something that they're super comfortable with. There will be posts that I see and I think they probably had a bit of help with that. But actually, so what?
Yeah.
If you're getting your opinion out there and you're posting and you're talking about something that is interesting and different, it doesn't really matter if you've had a bit of help with it. And I'd say that about, before we even had AI, you'd still, companies still have marketing functions to help them write things. Everything that a CEO talks about isn't necessarily written by them. Ghostwriters have been around for ages. It's just another form of that, of presenting yourself in a way that you are more comfortable with, that you feel comes across better. But yeah, I do think editing is very, very key with things like that. And I think the more you use it, the more you can get better at prompts and making sure, don't say things like this. This is more how I write.
I mean, you can upload perhaps things you've written in the past and say, this is my style, my tone, make it sound like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, say, I want to come off as friendly, relatable, a bit sarcastic. I want people to read it and think I'm funny. You can put as many prompts as you want into there. Don't just say, write me a post about this. I think the more you teach it, the more it's going to give you back what you want. So, yeah.
Great advice. After this amazing conversation, I don't think anybody can be left feeling unconvinced about LinkedIn. But if they were, what would you say to anybody that still thinks it's not for me?
Well, first I would say, it isn't for everyone. We can't have every single person in business on LinkedIn posting every single day. It's just, that's not going to happen. But if you are feeling tempted, but you're not entirely sure yet, my advice would be to just write a post. Write one post, introduce yourself, talk about who you are, a little bit about what you do. Again, make it into a bit of a story, make it fun, make it engaging. and see what happens. Put the post out there. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? One of your friends might text you and say, haha. But I have friends, my actual real life friends. Some of them are on LinkedIn and some of them do see my posts. Some of them engage with my posts, but I haven't had a single friend make fun of me for it. And I am so active. I mean, it really is a goldmine of things they could make fun of me for, but they don't. You know, people, your friends and your family are going to encourage you. So really, what is the worst that can happen?
Yeah, you really would hope that it would be that you would get support from friends and family, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I just think, you know, someone could read that post and end up being a friend or a client in the future. And I just think my advice is just to do it. Just do it.
Fab. We have to finish on my question that I ask everybody at the end of the podcast. And I know you said that you've worked more generally in marketing before you became a copywriter. So if you were starting a marketing function from scratch today, what would your 3 founding principles be?
Ooh, okay. Number 1 would definitely be honest.
Yep.
Be yourself, be utterly yourself. Second one would be transparency. Be really clear about what it is that you do and who you target and what you offer and why people should be buying that. And then the third one for me would just be fun.
Okay.
Be fun. Be a company that people want to work with. Be a company that people are excited to have meetings with you. They're excited to pick up the phone and talk about ideas with you, and they're comfortable that you are always going to be someone who wants to listen to them. So yeah, be honest, be transparent and be fun.
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely amazing conversation. We will put your LinkedIn link in the show notes, and I highly encourage everybody to connect with Sarah, because I promise you that her posts will be ones that you look forward to reading.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
Thanks for listening to Funnel This. Follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed it, do share with someone else who might find it useful too. See you next time.